Join the Council for the Model Aquatic Health Code, aka CMAC. CMAC is a member-driven organization that keeps the Model Aquatic Health Code sustainable, current, and complete. Your expertise is needed. Learn more at cmac.org. That's cmahc.org.
Welcome to the second half of the episode on the National Electric Code with Kelly and Dan. Always remember and never forget, if you're not qualified to do electrical work at a swimming pool, don't do it.
Gauge wire that just goes from the light to that. Is that the same thing?
It is. It's a bond, even though they're using a green wire. So NEC code currently and for many years requires the bond wire be a bare number 8 wire.
Mm-hmm.
I'm almost certain that it used to, and even if it didn't, local codes said it was okay to use a stranded 10 gauge. No. 6 gauge. Let me think about this. 6 gauge, I think it was. Stranded 6 gauge green wire for the bonding wire.
Okay.
So a stranded 6 or a solid 8 is what used to be acceptable, where today it's solid 8. So you will see bond wires at equipment pads even. You'll see where they, it's not real easy to run a stranded wire that you have to try to strip and all the rest of it and slide through the bonding lugs from a pump through a heater through a whatever at the equipment pad, but there are some that have been done. But that is a bond wire, and to go a step further. So back in the day, conduit was always metal.
Yeah.
It might be copper coming off of the niche. Hopefully it was copper. Some builders were using steel, which with pool water, it amazes me that was ever allowed to happen. But today, and for many years, it's PVC.
Mm-hmm.
So if we have a metal light niche in the wall of the pool with PVC conduit going up to a junction box, there then is a further requirement that you've got the bond wire on the outside of the niche, because it's a metal niche, that goes up to your bonding grid or it might go to the junction box and then continue on, but ultimately it's hitting the bonding grid somewhere. If it's PVC conduit, you also have to bond inside the niche, inside of the conduit. So there's another bond wire that's run to a bonding lug on the inside of the niche through the PVC conduit up to the junction box,
okay,
where it then attaches to a bonding lug at the junction box, which is then attached to the rest of the grid. So you have to do it inside the conduit as well as outside the conduit if you have a metal niche and PVC conduit in the ground. And in addition to that, the code says that this attachment point on the inside of the niche has to have a potting compound over it to help prevent the pool water from corroding and degrading that connection point, the screw terminal, if you will, where it's screwed into on the inside of the niche.
Yeah, I've seen that gunky stuff on it. Yeah.
So, there's and again, this is all in the NEC code, and none of this is new. I mean, this is, I'm referring to 1999 and stuff, but this has been, this kind of stuff has been around for a long time, but it's amazing to me how many people don't realize it. I see what we refer to as a 6x6 box, a plastic junction box that you can buy. It's 6 inches square and often 6 inches deep. And in pools that have, a lot of lights, they've got, a lot of Pentair stuff in our market. There's a lot of Hayward too and Jandy, but Pentair is probably the primary one. Hayward might be a little second there, but, maybe you got some elaborate pool setup, waterfalls, fountains, things where they used a lot of lights, and they'll run from the transformers through a conduit into this 6x6 plastic box as a junction box, going down to 4 or 5 lights over here, then continue on to another one, 4 or 5 lights. That plastic 6x6 box is not an approved swimming pool light junction box. So that's against NEC code. It always surprises me that the inspectors don't pick up on that kind of stuff. because that's one that we see missed a
I
lot.
went. I was at a pool finishing the startup once when the inspector came to do the final. The only thing he did was put this device that tripped the GFI plug to make sure the lights would turn off. He did that, and then he saw that happened, and he's like, "Okay, you pass. I'm gone," and left.
Yeah.
I was just like, "That's it."
You
He
know
was
what?
there for 2 seconds.
Honestly, inspectors, I think I said this a few episodes ago, as to, those who can do, those who can't inspect. Inspectors are never going to be the one you rely on to make sure your pool in your backyard is right and safe.
Yeah.
You need to have confidence in your contractor and confidence in your service people, that they know what they're doing from a consumer standpoint. Because if a consumer is relying on the pool to be built right or serviced right because of some inspector that's going to come by, forget it. The inspector is not going to be able to see everything that needs to be done to make that a well-built, long-lasting, safe environment, from start to finish. I oftentimes wonder why they're even there, to be honest with you. I get the idea, but it's amazing how during the COVID years, we used to always have to, in our market, it's very common that we have to be on site when the inspector shows up. Well, when is he going to be there? Tomorrow? Yeah, when tomorrow? Well, tomorrow. Well, okay, we can't move on until you inspect and pass this. There's nothing more we can do on that job site. So our crew is going to move to a different job site tomorrow. And it'd be helpful if you could tell us when you're going to be there. Tomorrow. Great. Thanks. So when you end up getting to that site and then having issues, and it's much easier to avoid it from the get-go. Know the codes, know what's expected, and go with it. So we had a pool. This is interesting. If you're building a vinyl lined, and I know you don't see really anything vinyl lined by you, right?
There's some. My dad actually makes a lot of money doing vinyl liners.
Does he? Okay, great.
Yeah.
Great. So the Midwest and the Northeast is like vinyl liner country. Like that's, the majority of pools in our market are vinyl line pools, have been for forever. Most vinyl line pools built through the years had steel wall panels. So basically you dig a hole, you get these steel wall panels, you bolt them together, and that becomes your structure that's in the ground. Well, those panels are metal, so they then need to be bonded. And not only do they need to be bonded, but the code actually says that in each corner of the pool. And it's interesting that they say that, because so many pools don't have corners, but that they always say each corner. And if an inspector comes out and it's a lagoon shaped thing, they'll go, well, you still got to do it about every 20 feet or so around the perimeter or something like that. But inevitably they say in every corner you have to have a solid 8-wire bond wire attached to the bottom of the wall panel, coming up out of the ground and attaching to your bonding grid, or whatever you want to, whatever you want to refer to, right? Okay, fine. Well, we've never built steel paneled in-ground vinyl pools. Our pools are polymer walls. Everything that goes into the ground is polymer. The walls, the bolts are nylon, the braces are polymer. There isn't steel anywhere in the ground. So we've done this project in the same town that uses 1999 code, back in the time when they were still using the code. And the inspector came out and failed our bonding inspection because he didn't see these 4 wires coming out of the ground at the corners. And my guy's on site, because he had to meet him on site, right? And basically, doing a little bit of stuff here and there, the equipment, whatever, trying to bide his time until the inspector shows up. And he calls me up and he says, hey, he's failing us because we don't have bond wires. I'm like, what are you talking about? Let me talk to him. And the inspector said, everything is bonded right, but you're missing the 4 wires that go down and attach to the bottom of the panels. I said, these are polymer panels. They're not metal. Doesn't matter. They got to be bonded. Why do they need to be bonded? Because that's what the code says. I said, no, the code says that metal panels need to be bonded in this way. And these are not conductive. There's nothing conductive in this structure. And he says, I'm not going to pass it without those wires there. So
That's crazy.
We literally had to go and dig in the four corners of the pool, break through the on the backside of there's we refer to it as a bond beam. When you erect these walls, you pour concrete about a foot high on the backside in the overdig area of the pool, and that concrete locks everything together, provides sort of an anchoring, if you will, to the walls to help keep them from moving and so forth. Well, to get to the bottom of that panel, we had to break through that bond beam in the four corners. So we out there with jackhammers and chipping hammers to get down to the bottom of the polymer panel to attach a copper wire, because now he wants to come back and see it actually attached. He's not just going to be okay seeing it come out of the ground. So we spend a day out there with a crew to get these stupid bond wires put onto a plastic panel because he wouldn't accept it otherwise.
Wow.
Yep. So sometimes, even though you follow the code, inspectors can cause you some headaches. Is that ghost? You have, just like Andrea. I don't know what it is with you guys.
I'm telling you, Mr. Rudy said that I have creepy stuff that would happen when we were waiting for our episodes to download when we first started, or I first started. Sometimes I feel like there is a ghost, sometimes I have to sage the house. Haven't done it in a couple weeks, so maybe that's what's going on.
Probably is.
What would you say are some basic things for people to look out for when they're going to pools for the first time for service?
Wow. There's so many. What you probably have a couple off the top of your head that you're thinking of, right?
Well, it may not be when you go there for like service, but when you install a pump, code says that it needs to be a GFCI pump breaker.
Right. Yep.
That's probably one I see actually not happening a lot. Like I just went to a job yesterday. They just replaced their pump and the installer did not put a GFCI breaker on it.
Yeah. And that is so common. I'm very involved in the Midwest chapter PHTA. I was president for many years. I'm currently serving as vice president. As of today, I think it was. We had a meeting today and brought I kind of ran my term out, if you will. But at any rate, we do design awards for the chapter, and because there are many areas in the Midwest of the country that don't really have their own functioning chapter, our chapter is Illinois and Wisconsin, but we take entries for this contest for non-functioning chapters throughout the whole Midwest: Tennessee, Indiana, Ohio, gosh, I don't even know where. I mean, all these different states, Nebraska even. Well, in our contests, where some contests are just contests, I'll say they're beauty contests for pools.
Okay.
We decided many years ago that we wanted to do what we could to try to help two things. One, educate the people who are building, and also try to ensure that the pools are being built to standards in some extent. So we require pictures, photographic evidence of certain standards being met. And one of those is that there are GFIs, right?
Yeah.
So send us a picture of your sub panel or whatever it is to show that there's GFIs feeding it. And we've had some very prominent builders through the years, even very recent years. This isn't going back, 30 years. This is in the last handful of years, who send in pictures, and the only GFI in the box, and the box is clearly marked what they're for. The only GFI is on the light.
Oh, wow.
That's it. The pumps are, there are 3 pumps in the backyard because there's beautiful waterfalls and slides. And I mean, these are $1 million backyards. They're just gorgeous, and they're not safe and not built to NEC code. The pumps are not GFI.
Yeah, that I think is my biggest one. If you do a Pentair pump, you better use the Pentair breaker, as we discussed before.
Yeah.
Even though like not all the manufacturers require you to have a GFI breaker or GFCI breaker, put it on there.
Yeah, the code calls for it.
Yeah.
And you need to have it. And you're right, Pentair's pump, their IntelliFlow pump specifically. The other pumps, they're super flow or max flow, depending on whether it's Pentair or Stay Right. You can often get away without needing the Pentair, what they call PPD, right? Personal protection device. The IntelliFlow, though, it'll throw some confusion to the breaker and cause non-Pentair breakers to trip at times. And the bad part,
I've heard that one.
The bad part about it is sometimes you put a pump in and it doesn't start doing it for a year. And you instantly go, oh, well, the pump is bad, and you put a new drive on the pump or you put a whole new pump in, but you find that it's still doing it. And I don't have an explanation other than I think that it takes, in some cases, time before that breaker is affected. And then when it is, it's almost like it's worn out or something, causing it to falsely trip. There's no problem with the pump, but the sensitivity of the breaker, the sensitivity of a standard GFI breaker is more sensitive than it needs to be. And if it is one of those breakers that's more sensitive than the pump was designed for, it'll cause these false trippings. So Pentair went to actually Siemens and had them build a breaker for them to their spec. And that's the breaker they sell. Now, we had a handful of years ago through Pool Corp bought the Siemens breaker, which, as far as we knew and the way it was presented to us, it was the Pentair breaker without Pentair's name on it. And because of that, it's less money. I would say through the course of a year and a half, probably 50% of those breakers we put in, we had to pull them out and put the Pentair breakers in because they ended up not functioning that way. And the breakers were still good. And in fact, we pulled them out, used them for other applications in the backyard that had to be GFI.
At least you weren't out that money.
So, but we still, even today, are still sitting with a number of these Siemens breakers that, it's not often that you need a 20 amp GFI breaker for other than a pump. And since we're primarily Pentair, it just, but whatever, we've got them. We'll get rid of them eventually.
I've also seen where people forget about the breaker when they're putting pumps in, and there was a yellow timer there previously, and they're putting a variable speed in, and that's not correct either.
Having it run through the timer, you mean, or just that the breaker's not a GFI because they didn't look at it.
They didn't even look at the breaker because the breaker's on the main panel.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's not correct either.
Right.
Just because it could turn the power on and off like a switch doesn't mean it's doing the safety features of the breaker.
Yeah, exactly. It's not, and the variable speed pump shouldn't be going through timers anyway. So that's a big no-no.
Kelly and Dan will be right back after these messages.
Have you heard there is a group of pool service professionals nationwide that are here to help grow and protect your business? The Independent Pool and Spa Service Association, known as IPSA, is here to help you. By joining the largest trade organization created by and for pool and spa service techs, you gain access to industry networking opportunities, exclusive educational offerings, IPSA's Tech for Tech route coverage, and more. So be independent, supported, and part of a professional community. Go to ipssa.com to learn how to be a member of IPSA today.
But the breakers, something that I see way too much, and I don't know if it's, I think it's got to be laziness, because I sure hope people aren't doing this knowingly. But somebody goes out and replaces a pump, and that flexible conduit, seal tight as I call it, coming from the timer box or the switch box or the junction box, whatever it is.
And they have it pulled nice and tight.
Well, it reached the original pump,
Yeah.
but it's about half an inch short to reach the new pump once you got the new pump plumbed in.
Yep. I
But
see that all the time, and I'm like, what are you doing?
the installer just puts it together and leaves that little gap between the fitting that's screwed into the motor and where the seal tight conduit itself begins, and there you see your black and red and green wire or whatever's inside of there, just not dangling. It's pulled tight too, but just out in the open.
Yeah.
And I just every time I see it, I shake my head and
Well, people are like, well, I can't afford to redo that. It's like, well, that's why you need to look at the job before you do it. So when you quote it, my price for pumps is not the cheapest, but that's because I'm considering the breaker I'm going to have to put in.
Mhm.
I automatically assume I'm going to have to redo the conduit on
Yeah, right.
almost all of these pumps because they're different. The pumps Hayward had 10 years ago were designed differently than the ones that they have now. And there's a difference about 5-6 inches.
Yeah, absolutely. And that kind of stuff just really drives me batty seeing it, because to me, I really think I know what it is, that whoever's putting that pump in just didn't have any on his or her truck. They got that far and they're, well, that's not that important.
But it
You know,
is, because one is a trip hazard.
yeah. Well, and I mean, there's a reason that those
Water
wires
can
are
get into
right.
the pump.
There's a reason
That
those wires are supposed to be in that protective conduit, and when they're exposed like that, all kinds of bad things can happen. We had one that it was a variable pump, but it wasn't. I don't remember whose it was, but it had an elbow screwed into the pump motor, right, for the seal tight, and it was pointing straight up because the whip of seal tight then went up to the switch box behind it. Well, what happened over time is the drive unit filled with water
yeah.
because of that, and then the drive unit is bad. And I don't know about you, but we don't replace drive units.
No,
You
there's
know,
no point.
when a drive unit goes, the whole pump is replaced because there's the drive units cost almost as much as a pump. You don't get any real warranty with them, and all that kind of stuff.
Well,
So
even when I do warranties, if it's a drive, just because it's hard to get drives, we'll do the power end.
yeah,
But yeah, once water's been in there, it's gone.
yeah,
It's like any electrical thing. Anytime water's in anything.
right, right.
And then when you replace the pump and you find that there's water in the conduit, that's another reason you have to replace it. You can't just, let's pour it out
Yep,
and hope for the best.
yep. No, that's one. And the other thing that drives me nuts is screws missing.
Yes.
On, you walk up to the Hayward control system box and you open the door and you see if it's supposed to have 4 screws, it's got 2, or
Yep.
whatever it is.
So what I do so I don't lose those screws is I take the plate off after I've taken them all off. I set them at the top, but after I'm done taking the plate off, I will then screw them back into the holes.
Yep.
That way I don't lose them.
Yep. That's what I tell all of our people to do too, is whether, and it doesn't matter, we do a lot of work on hot tubs, right?
Mm-hmm.
Same thing. You take the whole side of the hot tub off. There might be 15 or 20 screws and some of them holding it in. And, by the time that hot tub is 10 years old, they're like 4. The thing's kind of bowed out because there aren't enough screws holding it in. And then when you get inside of it, the control box inside is the same way. It's got 1 screw holding where it should have 6, and just crazy things like that.
Another thing, I think when you aren't going to a pool to see if it's something you're going to take care of, is, look at the control box, even if it's full automation or if it's for, what's it called? Just like a yellow timer, but make sure everything looks like there hasn't been a fire in it.
Yeah.
Because sometimes people will do that. There was another thing, but I forgot what I was going to say. It just really look over everything and just make sure that there's nothing that stands out that could be unsafe and liable for you after you take over the pool.
Yep. Oh, here's something else too that I see done wrong a lot, and this is more for the builders out there. Although, today we're getting more and more people on the service side that they've got the old, just switches to turn their pump and their lights on or whatever, and they want to do it from an app on their phone, right? Everything's on our phones today. So someone like yourself or me, maybe we'll sell them a control system. And we'll go out and we'll retrofit a control system, sub panel box, and the whole 9 yards into the backyard. The NEC code requires that there be a clear distance in front of any sub panel.
Yes.
That is basically a 3x3 square that you can stand on to open that box and stand there without bending over, doing the limbo or whatever it is to get into that box. And I can't tell you how often, even brand new pool construction, that we see these sub-panel control boxes mounted behind the heater or between the right above the pump. And there's, you might be able to stand there, but you're straddling a pump with one knee up on a pipe over here and, all this kind of stuff. And people, and again, that I think is often a lack of knowledge of the code that says you should do this. Now, our equipment pads, when we build a pool, we always, before we even begin in the backyard, have a conversation about it because we occupy a lot of space. And, people are like, well, can you put the equipment over by my air conditioner? No, you've only got a 3 foot by 4 foot space there. It's never going to work.
Well, or you want a heater in the windows right there.
Well, yeah, that stuff too. But our equipment pads are 4 foot by 8 foot for basically what I'll say is a standard equipment set.
Yeah.
Pump, filter, heater. We do in telechem, so we do have a 4-gallon acid tank that's on the pad. We do mineral purifiers. We're doing Nature 2 now. We're doing Frog, so that's on the equipment pad. But these things are, a 4x8 pad that's got to go somewhere, and part of that is because of this control box. And usually, we mount our control boxes on Unistrut. If people know what Unistrut is,
I mount mine on landscape posts.
Yeah. Usually at the end of an equipment pad, we'll drive in a couple of pieces of Unistrut, red heads into the side of the poured equipment pad to stabilize it down there. And then we use polymer deck boards spanning between the two, making about a 3 foot by 3 foot square that we're mounting the control box, our IntelliChem, our flow cell for the Intel. Everything gets mounted onto that. And then we've got all the space in front of that because it's at the end of the pad facing usually, away from the pad that you can stand there and have access to all this stuff without having to lean over and bend and twist and all the other stuff.
So I remembered what I was going to say. When customers put yard lights out, and what I mean by yard lights over the pool is that those light, like the light bulb ones that connect at one and you plug it in, those are actually not legal to put over your pool, because what if it was to fall in the pool when they were swimming? Right. I actually, when I had my route, if someone had it up there, I tell them that is not safe, it's not to code, and I would not service their pool until it was taken down.
Right. Yeah, that's a really, really bad thing. And not only can it fall in the pool, but you're also, whether it's you or the homeowner, there's some stuff float down in the pool, so they go and grab their pole with the net, and is the pole going to hit that wire, and is that wire bare? Is it going to electrocute us because of all that's horrible things that
and I see that one a lot.
it's real common. Those lights are like the thing now, right? For the
Yep.
last few years, like patios and it's a beautiful scene at night when it's done. Um, and to that point too, we don't see them in pools we're doing because we try to get into the yard lighting aspect
Yeah.
as well in the backyard. So we're putting, professional grade landscape lights accentuating things that people don't feel the need to string those up. But yeah, I've seen them strung across, screen rooms over pools, at homes in Florida that, and they're hanging maybe 5 foot above the deck.
Yeah.
Like you throw a beach ball, you're going to hit it for sure. Um, Pool noodles, all kinds of craziness. Or you have pools that have slides and they're actually tied to the top of the slide and used as, an anchoring point to then drape it across over to the coach light on the side of the house where it's actually plugged into the little thing you screw in where the light bulb was, to power it up or whatever. Nonsense. So yeah, if you see any of that stuff out there, tell people they need to get rid of it. We need to not be afraid to tell people and not be afraid to walk out of unsafe environments and refuse to do things if people are not going to allow you to tell them what needs to be different.
Yeah, you're not trying to be mean and a dictator. You're trying to be safe and make it so no one gets hurt, but also protect yourself.
Right.
We've talked about, just with the VGB regulations, like people will go after you for a lawsuit for any reason when they have to pay all that money for someone who survived or their loved one dies. So
Right.
just
And they feel that it's not, I mean, we're in it's not my fault society. We have been for a long, long time, and no one wants to accept responsibility for their own actions. And if they have these lights strung across the pool and you don't tell them that that's a safety hazard, and then something does happen, it's not uncommon that they say, well, my professional in the backyard never told me that was a problem. They've been out here time and time again and never once said I should be worried about it. So it's their fault because they're the professional in my pool environment. So never be afraid to stand your ground and elevate yourself above, the fear of losing a client or the fear of making someone mad or upsetting them. It's and be tactful when you're doing it. You don't come across as a Gestapo kind of I'm the pool police and I'm here to rip down all your lights and give you a citation. No, there are different ways that you can address people, and of course they're always Google it a little bit and find some examples and then throw some stories out there as to why these things aren't. Hey, did you know that? How many times have we heard about people being electrocuted in pools?
A lot,
for
especially
various
lights.
reasons. Yeah, pool lights are, I mean, that's very, very unfortunately.
Well, if you think
one of
about
the
it, that's
common
probably the closest item to the pool is the pool light.
Right.
So that's probably why, that's probably the number one killer inside a pool, other than what? Drowning from being sucked down there and just not knowing how to swim.
Right. Yeah. So.
And then you have people who someone is electrocuted, and then you have someone go into the pool and go after them, and then they get electrocuted, and it's just make it as safe as you can and just be knowledgeable. Now, one thing I did think in this episode we should mention is please check your local licensing requirements.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I know in the state of Texas, you have to have a certain license to work on electrical. You don't need any license to build a pool, but you need it to put a breaker in.
Right.
You said that in yours, there's not much licensing you have to do.
No, there's not. I mean, there are, like, when we build pools, we have to have a licensed electrician. We have to have them listed on the permit. We're a general contractor. We have them listed, but the the licensed electrician is mostly a supervising electrician at that point.
Mm-hmm.
So the work is being done by the builder's crews, or unless they subcontract that part of it. But in our, you know, we're running conduits for everything that's in the backyard, and then the electrician that we contract, he is signing off on the permit, and he is doing his own inspection of our work before the inspector is then coming out. And that's why the one I mentioned about having to basically weld the copper bond wire to the aluminum coping, he went out and took a look at it before the electrical inspection was called for. It's no different than if you had hired an electrical company to come do it. Not everyone doing the work is a licensed electrician.
Yeah.
Right. But there is a supervising person that is the licensed person. So, it's not that we, are just kind of like Wild West and running off doing whatever we want. There are some things, but on the service side of it, to your point, we don't have to have a license to be able to do electrical, to put in a pump or a heat pump or whatever.
Yeah. See, where I'm at, you need to have a contractor's license to do those things. But I'm only allowed to work on the equipment pad. I'm not allowed to work on the main panel.
Okay.
Which, again, I have no problem with that. Luckily, I have friends who are electricians, and they'll help me in those instances. But if you do want to work on certain things, an electrician. Unfortunately, in my experience, when it comes to pools, a lot of these electricians that show up when customers are like, oh, my pool electrical is not working, are idiots. If you know the old school way on older pools, you would have a switch underneath the control to turn the power off. I had a job where it was a new pool owner, bought the house, and I turned the equipment pad off because there was an issue. And they called their electrician friend to come fix the issue, but he couldn't figure out how to turn the pool equipment back on. And I'm like, well, it's outside of my service day. If you wait till your service day, which is next week, I won't charge you. But if I come out as service call, I'm like, okay. I show up, I turn the switch, and they're like, our electrician was here for hours trying to figure that out.
Yep, that happens. Well, and we said the other day that the most common wiring mistake on a GFI is that the electrician doesn't know to do that the neutral has to go back to the breaker, right?
Yep.
I mean, that is way more basic than the neutral going back to the breaker, but still, it's electricians, many of them don't have a lot of experience around pools.
I feel like pools is a specialty.
Yeah.
Compared to the rest of the house or property.
For sure. The electrician that we do have, we've been using him for all of the 6 years that I've been doing this. And he knows pools, knows, that kind of stuff. And if at whatever point in time I retire, that would be a little bit of a concern to me, because we'd have to find somebody else that we'd be so confident with.
Well, hopefully that's after you decide to retire.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that, like many of us, this ends up being,
life.
My coffin will be a pool one day. So,
I think that we covered a lot today. Obviously, there's a lot more, so please refer to the NEC book for your state.
Yep.
Again, if you have anything you want to ask us or comment or help us, please do. Again, on this episode, when we release it, we will put the resources that we might find helpful. And that will be on the Talking Pools podcast Facebook group. Like us, share us, download our episodes so we know you're listening. And if you have those questions, message us on Facebook, or you can even email us at talkingpools@gmail.com. And thank you again to our sponsors who we love because of the hard work they're doing in our industry to educate others and make them safe. So
Absolutely.
IPSA and CMAC. And I think that's it for today. We have one more episode in the series, which will be tips and tricks that we've learned over our careers. And I guess we'll talk to you next time.
Everybody have a great week. And as always, stay safe. We'll see you next week.
Bye.